If you're a type 1 diabetic and you're deliberately starting your runs or rides with high blood sugar levels because you're scared of going low, this video's for you. Easy rides or runs shouldn't be chaotic, but for a lot of type 1 diabetics, they are. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact framework that I personally use and that I use with all my one-to-one clients to start their sessions in range, stop reacting to the blood sugar levels mid-workout, and finish feeling strong. If you're new to the channel, my name's Tom and I'm a type 1 diabetic endurance athlete, and I also coach other type 1 diabetics in endurance sports. Over the past few years, I've completed 2 Ironman 70.3s, several Olympic distance and sprint distance triathlons, a marathon, 5 half marathons, and a few 10Ks and 5Ks and park runs thrown in. And what I've learned from racing myself and coaching other type 1 diabetics in endurance sports is that easy sessions are the most predictable when you've got a proper strategy and framework in place. And I'm going to show you the structure behind this now.
Okay, so first up, I think it's really important that we do understand the different session types and the impact that they can have on our blood sugar levels. So firstly, we have our easy aerobic sessions. This is like your zone 1, zone 2. And this is what I'm going to do this training about. And these will tend to drop blood sugar levels. And then the next type of sessions is the harder intense, maybe interval sessions, so zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, that sort of stuff, you know, your tempo, your threshold. These are going to spike your blood sugar levels. Now, I've spoken to and coached a lot of type 1 diabetics, as I've said, and if you're finding that your easy aerobic session is spiking your blood sugar levels, it's not easy aerobic. You've probably pushed the intensity a little bit too hard. Your heart rate's gone up, so then it started making your liver push out glucose, which is going to spike your blood sugar levels. Or you've gone into it with too many carbohydrates on board and not enough active insulin. Yeah. On the flip side, this isn't really as common, but if your hard intense sessions are tending to drop you, you're probably going to have too much active insulin on board, or you might not be pushing hard enough on them, but usually it's going to be this one, easy aerobic, that people have the issue with. Or if you've just got into like running or cycling, you're not very efficient, likewise it might be really hard on your body, it's stressful, so it's going to cause a spike. So a little bit of a caveat to that. So easy sessions we're going to be looking at predominantly in this training. And this is why easy sessions become so chaotic for us as type 1 diabetics. Because a lot of type 1s, they're just running high just in case they start to drop low, or they've experienced lows or bad lows, which I do get. So they get scared and they start to run high. Or they go into it with too much active insulin on board, and as we just said, the session's going to drop your blood sugar levels. Then the insulin works harder and drops your levels, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Or they're eating from fear, like I said before, fear of dropping low. Or then doing reactive corrections mid-session, so they're on a run or a ride or what have you, or in a race. They start to drop low, they panic, they get nervous, they overcorrect and they end up high. I know, because I did that in one of my very first triathlons, and it didn't end well. So this is what we want to avoid, right? So the simplest way to break this down is to look at it from this perspective. We only have 2 levers as type 1 diabetics that we can adjust. Lever 1 is insulin, lever 2 is carbohydrates. And predominantly the insulin one, how we adjust that will depend on the method that we're using, whether that's pump or that is pens. So in this lever 1 insulin, we're going to look at pump users. Now, a quick side note, I use the tandem pump. It's got control IQ, they've got activity mode, so on Omnipod. With our clients and with myself, we do this manually. Because activity mode, I mean, it can be great at times, but if you want full control, like I tend to find with clients and with myself, it's better that we do this manually. So we switch out of the auto mode, turn the control IQ off, go into manual mode, and then we can then implement this manually. So here's a starting guideline for easy sessions. If we're using a pump or in manual mode, we'll start with clients and with myself, just a starting guideline, by reducing your basal by 30 to 50%, yeah, and seeing how you get on with that. And we start this 30 to 60 minutes before the session. If you're doing this 10 minutes before, it's not got a chance to really take effect, yeah. So ideally, we probably would want an hour before, so then it's got a chance to take effect. And we maintain this reduction during the session, throughout the whole of the session. So this is what we do on pumps. Pretty simple on a pump.
If you're enjoying this video, consider hitting the thumbs up and subscribing to the channel.
Where it gets a little bit more complex on lever 1 is insulin for MDI users. So because like the long-acting insulin can't be adjusted like in real time like it can with a pump, what we would then do with clients who are using MDIs, who a lot of our clients are, we've got quite a mix, is we'd use carbohydrates to manage the risk and sort things out before the session actually starts. And here are some guidelines using starting blood glucose to guide your decision, and I'll talk you through these. It may seem complex, but it's pretty simple. So if before the session that your blood sugar level is high, over 10 moles, 180 milligram per deciliter, first of all, I'll figure out why. What have you done before that's made you go that high? And I solve that problem, because ideally this is the point of this, we don't want to be coming into every session high. I wouldn't add any carbohydrates before the session in this instance. And what I would do is we start the session easy and controlled. Obviously, it should be an easy session anyway. And we just allow the session to bring our levels down naturally. This is what a lot of type 1s get stuck in the cycle of doing every single session, or they're super high and they're letting it bring it down because they're scared. We want to avoid this, yeah? And this usually comes from eating too much and not enough insulin before the session. And this is why we end up in this situation. So this is what we're trying to avoid. But if this does happen, don't want to be happening all the time, this is how we solve it. Now, more ideal situations, if your blood sugar level's in range, so between 6 and 10 moles or 108 to 180 milligram per deciliter. Now, we would take, if a session is going to drop you and you know that pre-session, obviously you're on pens, you can't adjust your basal, you would use carbohydrates then to soak up that insulin so you're not having a low mid-session. So we would always start with clients with 10 to 30 grams of carbs, and we consume that 10 to 20 minutes before the session starts. And I'd choose simple, low-fat, low-protein sources. So maybe it's a small amount of your hypo treatments. For me, even though I'm on a pump, if I'm doing anything before a session, it might be a couple of days. Or a bagel and jam. It just depends. You're going to have to test this and find on what you get on well with, what your stomach copes with. And it's not obviously going to be too much to spike your levels. This is a starting point. If you find you spike, I would take less. If you find that you're still dropping low, I would take a little bit more pre-session, especially on pens. If your blood glucose is low or trending low, so 6 moles or 108 milligram per deciliter or under, we would just bump up the carbs a little bit pre-session. So we go to maybe 20 to 40 grams as a starting point, and we wait until our levels are rising and stable, and then start the session calmly, not rush it. Yeah. Now, the second lever we spoke about is carbohydrates. Now, this is a pre-session starting guide for carbohydrates. Yeah. Now, if your blood glucose is high, 10 moles or 180 milligram per deciliter, pens or pump, I wouldn't bother adding any carbohydrates before the session. Again, I'd look at why it's actually high. We want to avoid that, right? As I keep saying. If your blood glucose level is ideal and in range, 6 to 10 moles or 108 to 180 milligram per deciliter, you could have an optional 10 to 30 grams of carbohydrates. If you're using pens, as we discussed before, and it's going to drop you and you know that, you can't adjust your basal, I wouldn't say this is optional. If you're using a pump and you've made the right basal adjustments and you could get away with not having any grams of carbs before and you're going to stay stable because you've reduced your basal, this is just optional. I probably wouldn't go for this on a pump. But if your blood glucose is trending low, so 6 moles or 108 milligram per deciliter, then we'd add in 20 to 40 grams of carbohydrates. So very similar to what we've discussed about on the MDI, but this goes for MDI and pump, right? Now, if the session is over 60 minutes, fueling during is advised depending on your blood sugar levels and possibly some active insulin on board. I know this isn't solely about during, it's more about pre. But for example, what we do with clients for our longer, easy sessions that are over 60 minutes is we either make sure that if they're on a pump, the basal reduction that we've done might be a little bit less, so we've got some more active insulin there, so then we can fuel. Or if they're on pens, they might go into it with a little bit of active insulin on board if needed, or if the basal is right, keeping them stable overnight, but when they're doing these longer sessions, they drop in. That is actually kind of ideal, because when we're fueling longer sessions, what we want, and this sounds really strange to say, but we want enough insulin there on board that whether that's, from your rapid or your basal if you're on a pump or your basal if you're on pens, that if we didn't fuel, we would drop low, because we want to put that fuel in to prevent the low, soak up the insulin, but also give us energy so we don't crash as well, especially on the longer sessions.
If you'd like a free copy of my Type 1 Athlete's Blood Sugar Blueprint, just hit the link in the description below and I'll send it you straight over.
Now, the big debate is always fasted or fuel. So what this means for us as Type 1s is, do we go into these sessions fasted with no active insulin on board, or fueled with some active insulin on board. Now, as a general rule, if the session is under 60 minutes, usually it can be fasted, but it depends on how you feel. If you feel like shit going into workouts, even easy sessions with no fueling on board, then obviously I'd fuel it. If you are one of these endurance athletes and you want to lose some weight and it's easy sessions, you might want to go into these fasted just to help you have that deficit. But as we discussed before, if the session is over 60 minutes, fueled is probably going to be better just to get you through that session as well. Now, if you're eating within 3 hours and you're going into it, fueled, what I would look at doing, pens and pump, is reducing that mealtime bolus that you have. Start at 20%, because what this does, it means there's going to be some carbohydrates and glucose there that's not covered by insulin, which is going to, obviously, on the run, if it's going to drop you, that's going to soak that up.
Following this framework will give you a really, really good starting point. It's also going to help you build your confidence in your easy runs or easy rides and allow you to get the necessary data needed to make those necessary adjustments. And if you'd like more help with this personally, hit the link in the comments below and book a free strategy call in. Appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.